Commander Vexte had seen many things in his 43 cycles of service. He'd watched entire fleets get vaporized by stellar anomalies, witnessed diplomatic talks turn into bloodbaths, and once, memorably, observed a Thrakari diplomat try to eat a peace treaty because he thought it was a delicacy. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what he was watching on the security feeds from Training Bay 7. "Rewind it again," he muttered to Lieutenant Korth, his second-in-command, who was standing beside him with the expression of someone who'd just watched physics take a coffee break. "Sir, this is the 15th time we've rewind it again." The holographic display flickered, showing the timestamp rolling backward. Training Bay 7 materialized in crisp detail, a standard sparring arena with reinforced walls designed to withstand the most aggressive combat scenarios. The kind of place where young cadets learned that the universe was not particularly interested in their continued existence. Standing in the center of the bay was Cadet Zara Mills, human, 5 feet, 6 inches of what the recruitment files optimistically called compact efficiency. To most of the galaxy's species, she looked like a slightly oversized child who'd gotten lost on her way to a nursery. That assessment, as the 7 figures surrounding her were about to discover, was tragically incorrect. "Computer, identify the 7 cadets approaching Mills," Vexte commanded. "Cadet Threx of the Gorvani Union, Cadet Yillik the Crusher from the Horde Worlds, Cadet Banestriker from the War Clans of Zerion, Cadet Voss the Terrible, Cadet—" Yes, I get it," Vexte interrupted. "They all have very impressive, very violent names that probably took their parents weeks to think up. What are their combined physical statistics? Total mass, 2,437 pounds. Average height, 7 feet, 2 inches. Combat experience, extensive. Probability of victory against a single human cadet." The computer paused, as if it too was having trouble with basic mathematics. Calculating, error in processing, recalculating, 99.7%. Lieutenant Korth leaned forward, his mandibles clicking nervously. "What happened to the remaining 0.3%, sir?" "That," Vexte said grimly, "would be the part where they didn't account for the fact that humans are completely insane." On the screen, the confrontation was beginning. Threx, a hulking Gorvani with arms like tree trunks and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by someone with anger management issues, stepped forward first. Well, Threx growled, his voice carrying that special kind of menace that came from a lifetime of intimidating smaller beings. "Look what we have here. The little Deathworlder thinks she can play with the big kids." Zara Mills looked up at him with the kind of expression one might wear while observing a particularly unimpressive sunset. "Oh, goody," she said, her voice dripping with enough sarcasm to corrode metal. "The welcome wagon. Let me guess, you're here to teach me about respect and knowing my place in the galactic pecking order?" Yillik the Crusher, whose name was apparently not compensating for anything, cracked his knuckles with sounds like small explosions. "Something like that, meatbag. See, we've been watching you humans since you joined the Academy. You're weak. Software. You don't belong here with real warriors." "Soft?" Zara repeated, tilting her head as if considering the word carefully. "That's interesting feedback. I'll be sure to mention it in my performance review. Right after I finish redecorating this room with your faces." Banestriker, who had apparently given up on creative naming halfway through and just gone with "sounds intimidating," stepped closer. His species, the Zerians, were known for their bone-crushing grip strength, and their unfortunate tendency to solve all problems through the application of extreme violence. "You think this is a joke, human?" he snarled. "We're going to break every bone in your pathetic little body." "Every bone?" Zara asked, sounding genuinely curious. "That seems ambitious. I mean, the human skeleton has 206 bones. That's a lot of breaking. Are you planning to work in shifts, or is this more of a group project situation?" In the command center, Vextai paused the feed. "She's antagonizing them on purpose." "That seems unwise, sir," Korth observed. "Oh, it's completely suicidal," Vextai agreed. "Which means it's either the stupidest thing I've ever seen, or—" He trailed off, studying Zara's posture on the screen. She looked relaxed, almost casual, but there was something in the way she held herself, something in the slight shift of her weight that made his combat-trained instincts start screaming warnings. "Or what, sir?" "Or she knows something they don't." The video resumed. Voss the Terrible, whose species specialized in psychological warfare, leaned in close to Zara's face. "When we're done with you, little human, you'll crawl back to your pathetic homeworld and tell them that the galaxy doesn't want you." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "You know what? You're absolutely right. I should probably call home right now and let them know." She reached into her pocket, as if going for a communicator. All 7 bullies tensed, ready to pounce the moment she made any sudden moves. Instead, Zara pulled out what appeared to be a small, rectangular device. She held it up and pressed something on its surface. "Hey, Earth?" she said into the device, as if making a call. "Yeah, it's Zara. Quick question. Some of the local kids here think humans are too soft for military service. What should I tell them?" She paused, as if listening to a response, though Vextai was reasonably certain the device wasn't actually a communicator. "Huh," Zara continued. "Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, you want me to remind them about the thing? Are you sure? I mean, they seem pretty confident." "Okay, if you say so." She lowered the fake communicator and looked up at the 7 towering figures surrounding her. "So, my homeworld wanted me to remind you guys about something. See, there's this little misconception going around the galaxy about humans being weak. It's totally understandable, really. We're small, we don't have natural armor or claws, or the ability to breathe fire or whatever." She gestured vaguely at the assembled bullies. "But here's the thing about evolution on Earth." Threx growled impatiently. "Get to the point, meatbag." "Oh, I'm getting there," Zara assured him, with a smile that would have made a shark nervous. "See, Earth is what we like to call a death world. Everything there is trying to kill everything else, all the time. It's like the universe's most enthusiastic murder festival, except it goes on for millions of years." She began walking in a small circle, as if giving a lecture to particularly slow students. "Now, most species evolved on nice civilized planets, where the biggest danger was maybe running out of their favorite food or dealing with seasonal weather changes. But humans? We evolved in a place where literally everything wanted to eat us. Poisonous plants, predatory animals, deadly weather, unstable geology, toxic atmosphere." She counted off on her fingers. "Oh, and let's not forget the other humans." Illich snorted. "So what? You think that makes you scary?" "Scary? Oh, no. Zara stopped walking and faced him directly. "It doesn't make us scary. It makes us functional." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "You see," Zara continued, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made it infinitely more unsettling, "when you spend a few million years having literally everything try to murder you on a daily basis, you develop certain adaptations, faster reflexes, better pattern recognition, improved spatial awareness, enhanced aggression responses. She paused, studying each of their faces in turn. But the really interesting part is what happens to your brain chemistry. All that constant life or death stress, it does things to your neural pathways, makes you very, very good at violence, turns it into an art form, really. Banestriker took a threatening step forward. Enough talking. Time to teach you some respect. Oh, perfect! Zara clapped her hands together like a delighted child. I love practical demonstrations, but before we start, I should probably mention one more thing about human evolution. What now? Threx demanded. Zara's smile widened, and suddenly, everyone in Training Bay 7 could feel the shift in atmosphere. It was like watching a house cat transform into a tiger. We didn't just survive our death world, she said softly. We conquered it. We turned it into our personal hunting ground. And then, when we ran out of things to kill there, we started looking for new challenges. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Guess what? I think I just found 7 of them. For a moment, nobody moved. The 7 bullies seemed to be processing what they'd just heard, their primitive threat assessment systems finally starting to register that something was very, very wrong with this picture. Then Threx, either braver or stupider than his companions, let out a roar and charged. Now this, Vextai muttered, leaning forward in his chair, is where it gets interesting. What happened next would be talked about in academy corridors for decades to come. It would inspire thesis papers, psychological studies, and at least 3 different religious movements among species that had never believed in divine intervention before. Threx's charge was a thing of beauty from a purely kinetic perspective. 2,000 pounds of muscle and fury, moving at roughly 20 miles per hour, with enough momentum to punch through a reinforced bulkhead. Zara Mills stepped aside. Not dramatically, not with any visible effort. She simply wasn't where Threx expected her to be when he arrived at the space she'd been occupying a fraction of a second earlier. Instead, she was exactly where she needed to be to grab his extended arm, use his own momentum against him, and send all 2,000 pounds of Gorvani warrior face first into the reinforced wall with a sound like a small meteor impact. Threx dropped like a sack of particularly dense rocks. "One," Zara announced cheerfully. The remaining 6 bullies stared at their unconscious companion, then at the small human who was dusting off her hands as if she'd just finished some light housekeeping. "That was a lucky shot," Yillik snarled, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Oh, absolutely," Zara agreed. "Pure beginner's luck. I mean, what are the odds that a human trained in 12 different martial arts, with enhanced reflexes and a brain specifically wired for combat, could possibly anticipate and counter a straightforward charge from someone broadcasting their intentions louder than a military distress beacon?" She paused thoughtfully. "Statistically speaking, probably about 99.7%. Yillik and Banestriker attacked simultaneously, apparently deciding that coordination was their best chance against this increasingly terrifying human. They were wrong. Zara dropped low, swept Yillik's legs, caught his falling body, and used it as a battering ram to take out Banestriker. Both aliens went down in a tangle of limbs and bewildered grunting sounds. 2, 3. She checked an imaginary watch on her wrist. "We're making good time here, people. At this rate, we might even finish before lunch." Voss the Terrible, living up to his name by being terrible at pattern recognition, decided that the 3rd time would definitely be the charm. He lunged forward with claws extended, aiming for what he assumed would be Zara's vulnerable human throat. Instead, he found himself flipping through the air in a way that definitely wasn't covered in the Academy's standard physics courses. He landed hard on his back, wheezing and trying to remember how breathing worked. 4, Zara said, not even breathing heavily. Anyone else feeling like this is becoming predictable? Because I'm open to suggestions for making it more challenging. The remaining 3 bullies, whose names were becoming increasingly irrelevant, exchanged glances. These were career warriors, beings who had spent their lives studying combat and intimidation. And they were starting to realize that they had made a fundamental error in their threat assessment. They had assumed they were fighting a human. They were actually fighting a human who was enjoying herself. "You know what?" said the tallest of the remaining 3, a Krillian whose natural weapons included acid spit and razor-sharp arm blades. "Maybe we should—" He never got to finish the sentence, because Zara had apparently decided that talking time was over. She moved like liquid lightning, flowing around his defenses as if they weren't even there. One moment he was standing upright. The next he was contemplating the ceiling and wondering if his spine was supposed to make that sound. 5, Zara announced, and just so we're clear, that was the warm-up round. The last 2 bullies, finally recognizing that they were in way over their heads, turned to run. Zara sighed. "Really? We're doing the running thing?" Because I should probably mention that humans are also persistence hunters. We literally evolved to chase things until they collapsed from exhaustion. She didn't run after them. She didn't need to. She simply moved, covering the distance between them in a series of bounds that seemed to ignore several fundamental laws of physics. The first runner went down with a textbook takedown that would have earned approving nods from wrestling coaches across 3 galaxies. 6. The last bully, perhaps the smartest of the bunch, threw himself flat on the ground and shouted, "I surrender! I surrender. Please don't hurt me." Zara stopped, tilted her head, and looked down at him with what might have been disappointment. "Well, that's anticlimactic," she said. "But I suppose it shows you're capable of learning, which is more than I can say for your friends." She looked around the training bay, which now resembled the aftermath of a small natural disaster. 6 unconscious bullies were scattered across the floor, in various states of unconsciousness and reconsideration of their life choices. The 7th was still pressed against the floor, trembling. "You know what the really funny part is?" Zara asked the room in general. "Back on Earth, I was considered kind of a pacifist." In the command center, Vextai and Lieutenant Korth sat in stunned silence. "Sir," Korth finally managed, "what do we put in the incident report?" Vextai stared at the screen, where Zara was helping the surrendering bully to his feet and apparently giving him advice about better conflict resolution strategies. "I have absolutely no idea," he admitted. "Computer, what's the official time from initiation of hostilities to complete resolution?" 9.3 seconds, Commander." 9 seconds, Vextai repeated slowly. She neutralized 7 trained warriors in 9 seconds, and she was talking the entire time. Should we do something, sir?" Vextai considered this. On one hand, there had been a significant altercation in the training facilities. On the other hand, technically speaking, 7 cadets had assaulted 1 cadet, and that 1 cadet had defended herself. The fact that her defense had been so devastatingly effective wasn't actually against regulations. "Send a medical team to Training Bay 7, he decided. "And then, I think we need to have a very serious discussion about our evaluation methods for human cadets." "Sir?" "Lieutenant, I've been in military service for 4 decades. I've seen species that could crush starships with their bare hands, beings that could survive in the vacuum of space, creatures that could regenerate from almost any injury." He paused, still staring at the screen where Zara was now chatting cheerfully with the medical team that had arrived to collect the unconscious bullies. "But I have never, ever seen anything quite like that." "What do you mean, sir?" "She wasn't just fighting them, Korth. She was playing with them. The entire time, she was in complete control of the situation. She could have ended it in 3 seconds instead of 9, but she wanted to make a point." "What kind of point?" Vextai stood up from his chair and walked to the viewport that looked out over the Academy's main campus. Thousands of cadets from hundreds of species were going about their daily training, all of them preparing to serve in the Galactic Defense Force. Most of them, he realized, had no idea what they were really dealing with when it came to humans. "The kind of point," he said quietly, "that's going to change how this academy operates. Because if that little demonstration is what humans consider restraint, then we need to completely reevaluate our understanding of what they're capable of when they actually decide to get serious." Down in Training Base 7, Zara was finishing up her conversation with the medical technician. "Will they be okay?" she asked, gesturing toward the unconscious forms being loaded onto grav stretchers. "Oh, yes," the technician assured her. "Mostly just bumps and bruises, though I think a few of them might need some time to process what happened here today." "Good," Zara said with satisfaction. "Learning experiences should stick with you." She looked around the training bay one more time, then headed toward the exit. As she walked, she pulled out her actual communicator, not the fake one she'd used earlier, and activated it. "Hey, Mom?" "Yeah, it's Zara. First week at the academy is going great. Made some new friends, learned a lot about interspecies relations, the usual." She paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Mom? You were right about that advice you gave me before I left Earth." "What advice was that, honey?" Zara smiled, looking back at the chaos she'd left behind. "Sometimes the best way to make friends is to show people exactly who they're dealing with." As she walked away, her laughter echoed through the corridors of the academy, a sound that somehow managed to be both completely innocent and absolutely terrifying. Behind her, in Training Bay 7, the last of the unconscious bullies was being loaded onto a medical transport. As they carried him past the doorway, he mumbled something in his sleep. "What did he say?" asked one of the medical techs. The other tech checked his translation device and shook his head in confusion. "Something about never picking fights with anything that evolved on a death world," he said. "And also something about wanting to transfer to a different academy, preferably one in a different galaxy." The medical team exchanged glances and continued their work, adding this incident to the growing list of things we don't understand about humans but probably should. Meanwhile, in academies across the galaxy, a new piece of conventional wisdom was about to be born. Never, under any circumstances, mess with the Deathworlders, especially the ones who smile while they're explaining why you shouldn't mess with them. 3 days later, the Academy's medical wing was still buzzing with activity. Not because the 7 bullies were seriously injured, mind you, but because every species' psychology department had sent representatives to study what they were calling acute reality recalibration syndrome. Dr. Helixmar, the Academy's chief medical officer, and a being whose 6 arms allowed him to multitask in ways that made other species dizzy just watching, was reviewing the latest batch of psychological evaluations when his communicator chimed. "Doctor," came the voice of Nurse Quinn, "we have a situation in Ward 7. "What kind of situation?" Helixmar asked, though he suspected he already knew. "It's Cadet Threx again, sir. He's barricaded himself in his room and keeps muttering something about death-world physics and impossible human reflexes. He also keeps asking if we can transfer him to a nice, safe desk job somewhere far away from combat zones. Helixmar sighed, a sound that came from all 6 of his respiratory organs simultaneously. What about the others? Cadet Yilik has developed an intense interest in human psychology and keeps requesting reading materials about Earth's ecosystem. Cadet Banestriker won't stop asking questions about human bone density and muscle fiber composition. And Cadet Voss has submitted 17 different applications for early retirement. In 3 days! He's very motivated, sir. Before Dr. Helixmar could respond, his door chimed. "Enter!" he called out, and was surprised to see Commander Vextai stride in, looking like someone who hadn't slept properly in several rotations. "Commander? What brings you to medical?" Vextai settled into a chair that creaked ominously under his weight. "Doctor, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course." "In your professional opinion, based on everything you've observed over the past 3 days, exactly how dangerous are humans?" Dr. Helixmar's 6 arms stopped what they were doing simultaneously. "That's a very complicated question, Commander." "Try me." The doctor activated his personal workspace, bringing up a holographic display filled with medical scans, psychological profiles, and what appeared to be several mathematical equations that hurt to look at. "Well," he began, "let's start with the physical analysis of Cadet Mills's performance. According to the sensor data from Training Base 7, she moved with precision that shouldn't be possible for a being of her size and mass. Her reaction times were approximately 40% faster than our baseline measurements for human cadets." 40%? And that's just her reaction time. Her spatial awareness, tactical analysis, and threat assessment were operating at levels that our combat algorithms classify as genetically improbable. Vextai leaned forward. "What does that mean in practical terms?" "It means, Commander, that according to our understanding of physics and biology, Cadet Mills should not be able to do what she did. But she did it anyway, which suggests our understanding of human capabilities is fundamentally flawed." The holographic display shifted, showing a complex web of interconnected data points. "But here's where it gets really interesting," Dr. Helixmar continued. "I've been researching human military history, and I've discovered something rather alarming." "Which is?" Cadet Mills's performance, while impressive by Academy standards, is actually quite typical for human military personnel. In fact, based on the historical records I've accessed, she was probably holding back significantly. Vextai felt something cold settle in his stomach. Holding back? "Commander, did you know that humans have something called adrenaline? It's a chemical compound their bodies produce during stress situations that temporarily enhances their physical capabilities. According to my scans, Cadet Mills never triggered an adrenaline response during the entire confrontation." "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying she defeated 7 trained warriors while operating at her baseline human capabilities. She wasn't even trying hard." Before Vextai could process this information fully, his communicator chirped with an urgent message from Lieutenant Korth. "Commander, you need to get to Conference Room Alpha. Immediately. We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind involving Cadet Mills, 3 Academy instructors, and what appears to be a diplomatic incident with the hegemony of Zorthan." Vextai closed his eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. "I'll be right there." He looked at Dr. Helixmar. "Doctor, I want you to compile everything you've learned about human capabilities and prepare a full briefing. I have a feeling we're going to need it. Conference Room Alpha was in chaos when Vextai arrived. The holographic display showed what appeared to be a very agitated Zorthan diplomat, his tentacles writhing in patterns that the translation software was diplomatically rendering as extremely displeased. "Ambassador Glixtar," Vextai said as he entered, "to what do we owe the pleasure?" "Pleasure?" The ambassador's tentacles turned an alarming shade of purple. "Commander, one of your human cadets has single-handedly destabilized 3 separate political alliances." "I'm sorry. What now?" Lieutenant Korth activated a different display, showing news feeds from across the galaxy. Headlines scrolled past in dozens of languages. Human cadet defeats 7 warriors in 9 seconds. Deathworld training methods revealed. Zorthan military requests human combat instructors. Gorvani Union demands explanation of human capabilities. "Oh," Vextai said weakly. "That situation." "Commander," Ambassador Glixtar continued, his translator struggling with the emotional intensity. 3 of my government's military academies have formally requested permission to recruit human instructors. The war clans of Zerion have declared humans to be worthy opponents and are demanding formal combat exchanges. And the Gorvani Union is threatening to withdraw from the Galactic Defense Force unless they receive detailed briefings on human military capabilities. Ambassador, I'm sure we can work something out. And that's not even the worst part. The ambassador's tentacles were now cycling through colors that didn't exist in most species' visual spectrums. The video of the confrontation has been viewed over 7 billion times across the galactic network. There are species I've never heard of sending diplomatic inquiries about establishing relations with Earth. Vextai sank into a chair. 7 billion views? And climbing, Lieutenant Korth added helpfully. Also, sir, we've received over 300 applications for transfer to our academy in the past 2 days. Apparently, everyone wants to train alongside humans now. Where is Cadet Mills right now? Vextai asked. That's another issue, sir, Korth replied carefully. What do you mean? She's in advanced combat theory, taught by Master Instructor Kreldar. You know, the one who's never had a student successfully complete his course? Vexitai's blood pressure spiked. Master Instructor Kreldar was a legend in military circles. A veteran of 17 different wars, survivor of the siege of Noxtar, and the being who had personally trained 3 generations of elite warriors. His advanced combat theory course had a completion rate of approximately 0.3%. Please tell me she's not. She's debating military philosophy with him, sir, Korth interrupted. And from what our observers report, she's winning. The conference room fell silent except for the sound of Ambassador Glixtar's tentacles slapping against his forehead in frustration. Get me a direct feed to that classroom, Vextai ordered. Now. The holographic display switched to show the interior of Classroom Theta, where Master Instructor Kreldar, all 8 feet of scarred Zeltharian warrior, was pacing back and forth in front of a small human cadet, who appeared to be taking notes. So, Cadet Mills, Kreldar was saying, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen more combat than most species had seen breakfast. You claim that superior firepower is not always the deciding factor in military engagement. That's correct, Instructor, Zara replied, not looking up from her notes. History is full of examples where smaller, more adaptable forces defeated larger, better-equipped opponents through superior tactics, better understanding of terrain, and psychological warfare. Psychological warfare? Kreldar's scarred face twisted into what might have been amusement. Elaborate! Zara looked up, and even through the holographic feed, Vextai could see that dangerous smile again. Well, sir, take the incident in Training Bay 7 3 days ago. 7 opponents, significantly larger and presumably more experienced than myself, decided to engage in combat based on faulty intelligence about human capabilities. And I defeated them not just through superior reflexes or training, but by controlling the psychological aspect of the engagement. I made them angry, which made them sloppy. I gave them false confidence by appearing vulnerable. And most importantly, I made them underestimate what they were really dealing with. Kreldar stopped pacing. Which was a human who had spent her entire life preparing for exactly that kind of situation, sir. You see, on Earth, we have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Explain this metaphor. It means that determination, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to win are often more important than raw physical advantages. Humans didn't become the dominant species on our planet because we were the biggest or the strongest. We became dominant because we were the most stubborn, the most creative, and the most willing to keep fighting even when logic said we should give up. In the conference room, Ambassador Glixitar made a sound like a deflating balloon. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he muttered. On the screen, Master Instructor Kreldar had stopped moving. Entirely. Cadet Mills, in your opinion, what is the most important factor in military success? Adaptability, sir. The ability to change tactics, strategies, and even fundamental approaches based on changing circumstances. Most species develop military doctrines based on their natural advantages. Humans develop military doctrines based on the assumption that we don't have any natural advantages, so we have to create them. Create them? How? Zara's smile widened. By being more willing than our opponents to do the unexpected, the illogical, and, if necessary, the completely insane. Kreldar was quiet for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that spoke of genuine amusement and, possibly, respect. "Cadet Mills," he said finally, "I have been teaching military theory for over 2 decades. In that time, I have had exactly 4 students successfully complete my advanced course." "Yes, sir. I read about them in the Academy records." "Would you like to know what they all had in common?" "I assume they were exceptional warriors, sir." "No, Cadet. They were all completely unpredictable. They all approached problems from angles that conventional military thinking said were impossible. And they all had the absolute certainty that they could win, even when facing overwhelming odds." He paused, studying her carefully. "Congratulations, Cadet Mills. You will be my 5th successful graduate." "Sir, I haven't finished the course yet." "You finished it the moment you walked into Training Bay 7 3 days ago and decided that 7-to-1 odds were acceptable terms for engagement. Everything after that is just paperwork." In Conference Room Alpha, the silence was deafening. "Ambassador," Vextai said finally, "I think we need to have a very different conversation than the one we planned." "What do you mean, Commander?" "I mean that maybe the question isn't how to contain the situation with the humans. Maybe the question is how quickly we can learn from them." Lieutenant Korth pulled up another display, showing recruitment and application statistics. "Sir, in addition to the transfer applications, we've received formal requests from 47 different species asking if they can send observers to study human training methods. The Tactical Institute of Proxima has offered to fund a complete research program into human military psychology. And he paused, looking uncertain. And what, Lieutenant? The High Command has sent word that they want to meet with Cadet Mills personally. They're flying in tomorrow. Ambassador Glixitar's tentacles went completely still. The High Command? All of them? All of them, sir. Apparently, they want to discuss something called Project Deathworld Integration. Vextai felt the last pieces of his carefully ordered military career crumbling around him. Project what now? I don't have the details, sir, but according to the preliminary briefing, they want to discuss the possibility of incorporating human training methods into the standard academy curriculum. Something about preparing the next generation of galactic defenders for unconventional warfare scenarios. In other words, Ambassador Glixitar said slowly, they want to teach other species to fight like humans. It would appear so, sir. The conference room fell quiet again, as everyone contemplated the implications of this development. Finally, Vextai stood up and walked to the viewport overlooking the academy grounds. Below, he could see thousands of cadets from hundreds of species going about their training. Soon, if the High Command had their way, they would all be learning to think like humans. The galaxy was about to become a very different place. Ambassador, he said without turning around, I suggest you contact your government and advise them to start revising their threat assessment protocols. Why? Because 3 days ago, we learned that one human cadet could defeat 7 trained warriors in 9 seconds. Tomorrow, we're going to start teaching everyone else how to do the same thing. He turned back to face the room. And if I know anything about humans, they're going to be absolutely delighted to help. Far below in the academy corridors, Cadet Zara Mills was walking back to her dormitory, completely unaware that she had just accidentally revolutionized military education across the galaxy. She was thinking about dinner, her upcoming assignments, and whether she should call home to tell her parents about her interesting first week. As she passed a group of younger cadets, she heard one of them whisper to another, "That's her. That's the human who took down 7 seniors in 9 seconds." Zara paused and looked back at them with a friendly smile. "Actually," she said conversationally, "it was 7.5 seconds. But who's counting?" The young cadets stared at her with expressions of mixed terror and admiration. "Also," she added, "if anyone else is thinking about testing human capabilities, maybe consider starting with something easier, like an arm wrestling contest or trivia night. Just a suggestion." She continued walking, leaving behind a group of cadets who were suddenly very interested in pursuing careers in non-combat specializations. Behind her, the academy continued its daily operations, blissfully unaware that everything was about to change. The High Command was coming, Project Deathworld Integration was about to begin, and somewhere in the galaxy, military strategists were having very serious discussions about the tactical implications of beings who evolved on planets that actively tried to kill them. But for now, at least, there was peace. The kind of peace that comes right before everything gets turned upside down by a small human who thought 7-to-1 odds were perfectly reasonable terms for a friendly disagreement. The kind of peace that, as humans had, learned long ago on their Deathworld home, never lasted very long. But while it did last, it was absolutely beautiful.